Hello, hello. We have 1 minute to go. Because once it's 2 p.m., we're going to get started. So once you join in, feel free to share with us where you are joining in from and also the age of your kids. Hi, I see you. Welcome, welcome. It's 2 p.m. and we are live. Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited. Like I shared, a little too excited to be here. So please share with us where you're connecting from, which country, which location, and also the age of your children. I'd like to know the audience that we have. Good, good. You're welcome. Okay, so while we get started on that, I also wanted to mention that today's topic is a very, very important topic because it's at the heart of who we are at the Montessori Home Education Academy. We're really centered on the love of learning. Our goal is not to teach, but to foster the love of learning. That's something that we say, so that ultimately, when the child loves learning, they can teach themselves. So that's very, very important. And if you don't know me, my name is Nkemsinachi Agu, and I'm the founder of the Montessori Home Education Academy. Um, so here today, we're going to be talking about fostering the love of learning in our children. I have a background in engineering, project management, business administration, different aspects, but ultimately I'm a teacher. I love teaching and you know, I love teaching people. I love learning myself, and I also love teaching people to teach others. So basically teaching the parents, right? And helping others to learn. That's really my goal is something I enjoy doing. And also the goal of the academy really is to help parents to foster the love of learning in their own children. I'm also a Montessori educator, certified Montessori educator for children 0 to 3 years old and 3 to 6 years old. So welcome everybody as you're joining us. Good to have you here. Okay, so one of the hello Chinelo, welcome. Good to see you. Welcome. Just don't forget to share where you're connecting from and the ages of your children. Welcome. Okay, so if let's say this video, if I was to do it in 1 minute, I would summarize it simply as saying to foster the love of learning, what you need to do is stop quizzing your children, start wondering instead, and foster the love of learning. So if that is the only thing that you take away from this video, then you've probably learned enough. But we know it is not as simple as that. However, I want you to just remember that stop quizzing, start wondering, and foster the love of learning. So at least if you remember, have that in mind. Um, all the other things we're going to be learning today will be centered on that. Oh, good. Welcome. So 4, 10, and 12. That's awesome. That's awesome. And my own kids are 4 and 2 years old. But like I said, my own training is for children of 0 to 3 and 3 to 6 years old. So you're still in good hands. And I've also found out that for some people with older children, they still say that some of the tips they get from here can be applied to even older children. So you're very much in the right place and in the right hands. Okay, sorry. Can you hear me well? Let me make sure that this connection is good. So I said for older children, you're also fine. So my own children are 4 years and 2 years, but my training is for 0 to 3 years old and 3 to 6 year old. So my Montessori education training. And what I've learned from some people that have participated in our programs is that even for older children, they still benefit from the knowledge that they get during the training to share and to teach their own children. So that's very helpful. Please confirm that you can hear me. I think one of the benefits of the live session is that one of the benefits of live sessions is that at least I can be sure you can get the feedback and you can ask your questions immediately. Good. Okay. So, like I said, the highlight is stop quizzing, start wondering, foster the love of learning. So, we're going to dive into a bit. What exactly does it mean to quiz our children? What is it all about? What is the difference between quizzing and wondering? In fact, I even broke it down into quizzing questions and wondering questions. So, let's dive right into that. Now, if you're trying to understand what it is to have a quizzing question, it's we can look at it from different aspects. So one of the first things is, what is your objective when you ask a question? When we ask our children questions, what do we have in mind? Welcome, Chioma. Good to see you. Remember to share the ages of your children. Okay, so we go ahead. So quizzing questions and wondering questions. We are trying to differentiate between the two because that will give us an idea when I say stop quizzing and start wondering. So when as parents, when we ask our children questions, what do we have in mind? What's our goal? As teachers also, if we have teachers in the house, what do we when we give them tests, homeworks in the class, assignments, what is our objective? Because that objective is what will determine really how we frame our questions, how the tone of voice, and even the time of the day when we ask it. So what is our objective is very key to note that. And then in the comments, I would like you to share when you ask your children a question. Let's say, what is 1 plus 1? Or you say, where is this cup? I mean, it could be as random as, whatever it is, whatever aspect. I want you to share whenever you ask your children questions. Okay, let's focus on the academic ones. If you ask them, what is 2 plus 2? Or what color is this? Or what shape is this? What do you have in mind? So please just share with us briefly. I'll give 1 minute for that to see your responses. What is asking your children questions them, or whether you're wondering with them? Pause for a few more seconds, waiting for your response, making sure you can hear me. Please, if you don't hear me at any point or my volume is low, please let me know. Oh, great. 4 and 2 years old. That's awesome. Same age with my own children as well. So share with, why do we ask our children questions? And if you're a teacher, what's the purpose of tests and exams that we have? And just some guidance. So for example, is it our purpose of asking them questions? Is it to test their intelligence? Is it to be able to give them an award? Let's say in a school setting. Is it to rank them? Is it to compare? Is it to assess their understanding? Oh, I want to see how they understand this or how well they know a certain thing. Because when we ask questions, if we have these things in mind, that will determine how we structure the questions. Correct. So let me see. I don't think I see the response is coming in yet. Just making sure I'm not missing it. Okay. So while I wait for the responses to come in, I'm going to share what really a question should be all about. Like when we ask questions, what the goal should really be. So the first goal, if we even check the definition of a question, you see that the first goal of a question or series of questions is ultimately to know something and to get information. In fact, if we check the definition of question, it means a sentence that is structured in a way. I think I saw that from the Oxford Dictionary. A sentence that is structured in a way as to elicit information from people. Please confirm that we are here. Just a comment, because I want to make sure we are still connected. Just put a comment, I can hear you, or yes, we are here. Okay, are we still there? Just making sure. Okay, so I think I see. Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, I just needed to hear that because sometimes it might just fluctuate and go out. Yes, so we're going into what is the real purpose of asking questions. So I looked at the definition of a question, how it says the purpose is really to elicit information, to get answers from people. And ultimately, when we ask questions, that's really what we're trying to find out, right? And questions, if it's in form of a quiz, it tends to request answers without necessarily triggering a thought process. So if I say, where is this, or what is this, I expect it to just tell me it is this, it is that, without even thinking too much, right? However, when we look at wonder questions, the one I call wondering questions, the idea will be to stimulate thinking. So we're going to look at the differences between those type of questions subsequently. Now, the second goal of asking questions should really be to improve. So if I teach a child something, and then I ask them a question, I'm trying to confirm, can they really understand, can they really understand what I just taught them? Also, if they don't understand, okay, let me change my approach in this way, let me change the method. Or if they understand it too easily, then maybe I need to increase the scope. They've learned this already, I need to move forward. So that is very key. I'm going to share some stories with us. I was reading the Bible this morning. I got some very interesting stories that are just so much in alignment. I said, okay, I need to share with us. Now, if you're not a Christian, it is also fine. Just take this as a story that you can learn from. Very interesting story. And I'll summarize it briefly for us. So this was from Matthew 16, verse 1 to 4. And the subtitle, it was the Word on Fire Bible. It said, The Demand for a Sign. So just reading through quickly, it says, the Pharisees and the Sadducees came to test Jesus, and they asked him to show them a sign from heaven. So from the title, it already says the demand for a sign. So, some of us sometimes when we're asking questions, it's more of demanding, trying to get something out almost in a way that is not necessarily so approachable or so friendly. So that demand for a sign is already where the lesson begins to start from. Are we demanding things when we are asking our children questions, or are we trying to actually learn? So they came to test Jesus, as the passage says, and they asked for a sign from heaven. And then his response was this: When it is evening, you say it will be fair weather, because the sky is red. And in the morning, you say it will be stormy today because the sky is red and threatening. So Jesus said, You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times. An evil and adulterous generation asks for a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of Jonah. Then he left them and went away. So, what lesson did I get from this? Sometimes the way we ask our questions has a way of blocking, almost putting the child in the form of a block where they just shut down, right? If we ask a question and it's clear we're not trying to know, or we're not really interested in what we're even asking, or we're not interested in, will I say, them as a person, or as people, it has a way of tending for them to get shut down and not necessarily try to put in that effort to even think about what we have asked. And even sometimes things that they know, they don't seem to know it anymore. They don't respond accordingly. So that's just an example, right? So when they came and they asked Jesus, oh, show us a sign, do perform some wonders for us, he already knew that the purpose was just to test. So sometimes even children, they come across a test, a question, and there's not much inspiration to respond to it. So we're trying to avoid that as parents, as teachers, to make sure that we're not killing their love of learning, but we're building their curiosity. Um, and another part of this, a story that I also read, was talking about the rich young man, also in the Bible. And he came, this was in Matthew 19:16 to 22, and he came to Jesus and said, Teacher, what good deed must I do to have eternal life? Now, the tricky part of this question is that sometimes our questions are structured in a way that, sometimes there's some questions, if you've been a teacher before, or even currently, you know that you may get some questions and it's like the student or the child is trying to tell you things instead of actually ask a question. They're telling you, oh, do you know that this, and this, so what is that? And then at the end, you're wondering, okay, what is the question? Are you trying to tell me what you know, or are you trying to actually learn? So the same way for us, because with that story of the rich young man, he had finished sharing, oh, that what must I do to have eternal life? And Jesus shared with him the commandments: do this, do that, do that. He said, oh, I've done all those things. And then he told him, your possession, come and follow me. Um, and then the rich young man looked disappointed. So if we're asking questions and we're not really looking to get the answers, or we're just doing it as a test, there's that discouragement that can come from the child, and not being so involved in it. So one way you can avoid having such having one way you can avoid asking maybe random questions that the child will not even be so interested in or trying to participate in, is to stay in touch with your child's teachers, because ultimately questions should be based on what someone has been exposed to, what someone has been taught. Now, if you're not homeschooling, for example, of course you may not know all that they've already learned. So this is addressing both homeschoolers, part-time homeschoolers, or those who their children are in school. You need to stay in touch with your child's teachers. Don't wait, for example, to the end of the term to find out what they have learned and then, oh, what they didn't do well in. You should be able to know actually, even on a weekly basis, oh, what have they learned this week? Or what is the theme for this month? So that way your questions will be focused on trying to engage with them, trying to find out what they're, how they're actually coping with what they're learning. Um, so, for example, I partly homeschool, and if I see that my daughter maybe they did colors in school or some other thing, you can be sure that I'm going to incorporate it, when they come back. Oh, we just talk about colors, or there'll be some colorful things displayed around the home for them to work with. And know that all these questions don't have to take a long time. Try to avoid just quizzing, quizzing, quizzing. And I'm also going to share with us, moving down the line, the some examples of quizzes versus some examples of wondering. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to send it in the chat as we go along. Now I'm going to differentiate between quizzing questions and wonder questions. So that way you will know which one your questions typically fall under, and you can structure accordingly. You want to move from quizzing to actually wondering. Now, quizzing questions tend to focus on answers. Mistakes are disappointing. For example, if I ask a child what is 1 plus 2 and they tell me 4, the disappointment will show on my face because mistakes are not necessarily welcome or acceptable when we are asking quizzes. If you give a child a test, of course, and it's maybe 5 questions with 5 points, for everyone the child fails, of course, their result is going to be dropping, right? So when you're giving quizzes to children, whether you're giving it at home in the way you're asking them orally, or whether it's in school, quizzes focus on answers. Um, yes, we have the objective and subjective where you get to show your process or not process, but ultimately the answer should be correct. So quizzes focus on answers. Mistakes are not really welcome. It tends to trigger anxiety for some people, especially when you're just looking forward to, oh, we have this test coming up, what can I do, what can I do? It's all about what can you write down, right? There's also that tendency to avoid quizzes. If a lot of us have the chance, or if a lot of children have the chance, they'll probably want to skip out on the whole quizzing thing and just play or learn and do something more fun. It also tends to dampen confidence, with quizzes, if the answer is always tending towards, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure. Sometimes you might even find yourself in that situation. If someone is asking you a series of questions and you don't know the answer to them, you begin to feel, you begin to question yourself, begin to question your knowledge, begin to question, what are you really doing here? Are you learning what you're meant to learn? So we have to be very careful and cautious with quizzes. Now, for wonder questions, which I'm going to be sharing the examples later on, the purpose is to stimulate thinking, stimulate curiosity, stimulate interest of the child, and also to bring about excitement. When we ask wonder questions, we're going to learn about wonder questions. You're going to learn, you're going to get the child excited, and the focus is more on the process than on the answer. Because remember, for wonder questions, you're trying to find out maybe what the child knows and what you need to teach them, like what extra thing you need to help them with. The purpose is not for them to pass or to fail, is to really get that information. Okay, what do you know and what is left to know? What is the gap? So in wonder questions, mistakes are welcome, and in fact they are actually helpful. So if I ask a child, oh, do you know um, maybe how many colors there are in the rainbow, for example, and the child says, oh, this or that, or do you know the order of the colors of the rainbow? And then the child maybe mixes it up. You say, oh, okay, so now you know that. So when you get that kind of response, you might now be able to tell, okay, the child knows this, doesn't know that, so I can now teach them this or that. The purpose is not for them to get it right or for them to get it wrong. If they get it, if they get it right, fine, then you know what next you can move on to. If they get it wrong, also fine, because now you know what else you can teach them. So the focus of wonder questions is really um, on the process, boosting that excitement and interest. And it's a confidence booster because it's almost like they can't even get it wrong. Like whatever answer the child gives you, there's always a way. Okay, sorry. I think somebody is having just a second. Okay. Please confirm. I think some of us got disconnected. Um, let me see how many of us are still here. Please confirm. Okay, I think someone else just joined us again. If for any reason you miss any portion, the replay will be available, so don't worry about it. Sorry for the connection issues. I'm not sure where that is coming from. Um, so I was just talking about how wonder questions can be a confidence booster. Now, because the answer is neither, like there's no right or wrong, whichever answer you give, it means the teacher, the parent, whoever it is, can build on that answer to teach what they want to do or to cover what they want to do. So I'm going to now share some examples of these wonder questions that I talk about. So For instance, I wanted to teach my 4-year-old the classes of animals. So we have previously done, we didn't just jump into that. We had previously done um, living and non-living things. And I think that when I taught her about living and non-living things, it was probably a 5 minutes lesson. I know it may sound funny, but really, you have the advantage as a parent to teach your child easily from home. I know it may not always come easily at first, but there's this benefit of being able to do so much in a little time because of how well you know your child. So I think when I was teaching her about living and non-living things, an example of how to use a wonder question is, oh, do you know you're a living thing? Or do you know there are living and non-living things? So now, when I talked about how there is no right or wrong answer, if she says she doesn't know that there are living and non-living things, then I can tell her what they are. If she says she knows, I'll say, "Oh wow, tell me what is a living thing, what is a non-living thing, or show me an example of a living thing." So whichever answer she gives, she's correct. And I know there's a place for this is not the aim is not to always make them happy or never let them fail or anything, but for the purpose of trying to foster that love of learning, you're not quizzes don't necessarily help, right? But wondering helps to get their interest. So imagine if if maybe this was I think living and non-living things I told her when she was about 3 or thereabouts. Now, even imagine you as an adult, someone says, "Do you know you are a this?" I'd be like, "Really? What is that?" Maybe you've not heard about it before. But it makes you think. It doesn't make you start panicking that there's something that you don't know or you're worried about, right? So, with the example of living and non living things, do you know you're a living thing? And maybe she'll say, "What is living thing?" Because first, she's even trying to understand the language, she's trying to understand how she connects to that. And so when somebody now asks you a question in return, in this case the child, it means they are now looking for answers. So you've got their interest, you've got their curiosity stimulated. There's no need to tamper with their confidence. There's a different you're boosting their confidence rather than breaking it down. And then when they ask you, no, like what is a living thing, or how am I a living thing? What does that even mean? Then they are now primed to learn, to receive that information you want to give them. And if it was something that, okay, you were actually trying to find out if they have learnt about it, let's say they were in school, not for a 3-year-old now, but for something else, someone else, and you're trying to find out if they've learnt it, then you will also know if they have done this before. Again, remember I said you have to stay in touch with your child's teachers. It is not at home that you start quizzing them. Have you done this? Have you done that? But you should have known this, you should have known that, right? You need to also actually be aware of generally what they have been covering or what you yourself have been covering and base your questions, whatever it is, around that and not the other way around. So that is an example, right? Whichever answer they give, you now tailor your response accordingly. So before I went into non and living and non-living things, another one, the next step will now be, okay, um, do you know there are vertebrates and non-vertebrates, or do you know there are two categories of living things, or do whatever way you can structure it, right? It can be quite interesting. So now if you say, do you know there are vertebrates and non-vertebrates, she might say, what is a vertebrate? And but then now she's learning a new word. She's also curious again, and you can ask that question. The one that actually triggered the whole living and non-living things was the classes of animals. So where I can say, "Oh, do you know there are 5 classes, or do you know how many classes of animals there are?" And she might say, if for some reason she has learnt it from somewhere, she might say there are 5, right? Or do you know how many countries there are in Africa? If you ask an older child, or how many countries there are in North America. If you ask an older child, maybe um, you're not trying to say how many countries. Now let me even clarify the difference: a quizzing question versus a wonder question. If I say how many countries are there in North America, there is only one correct answer, right? The child needs to know how many countries there are. And if they don't know, they are going to be stammering. If they know, maybe they'll say it boldly. And that is it. If they answer it correctly, it's like end of discussion, right? Nothing more to see here. But if you ask, do you know how many countries there are? Like just even a little twist in the order of the words, like how many countries are there versus do you know how many countries there are? I might say, I don't know. So now you can tell me, right? But even a more interesting one is, did you know there were so and so number of countries in North America, in Africa? And the child can say, oh, I didn't know. Maybe I thought there was this number, or I haven't even thought about it before. Then now you know where to start your lesson from. Now you know where to start your discussion from. Whenever you ask a question, your goal should always be to foster the love of learning, and you should also have something to teach the child. Don't just be quizzing if you don't have something to offer. It's very important because you sometimes when we put ourselves in their shoes, we may not even be able to answer some of these questions. We just maybe you just cram it somewhere and then you now come and throw it back at the child, and then the child will now be scrambling trying to learn these things. That should not be our goal from now on. Let us move from quizzing questions to wonder questions. Another example I'm going to share is okay. I'm just going to share that. So I think yeah, when I asked the other one, did you know there were seven colors in the rainbow? And I said, oh, I thought there were five. Oh, I thought there were three. Oh, I thought it was this number. If the child says, yes, I know there are seven, you can say, oh, tell me the colors. They might say red, blue, purple. Whatever answer they give you, you can build on that. Now, if they tell you the colors, you can say, oh, do you know the order? Can you tell me the order? Can you color it? So you're building on what they have told you to know what you want to ask, to know what you want to assess. The purpose of questions should not just be for questions themselves or to just get answers, because what does it benefit you if you just ask them a question and they get the answer and everything is over, right? You need to stimulate their curiosity, you need to stimulate their interest, you need to stimulate their excitement, stimulate thinking. If you're asking questions that the child doesn't have to think about, you haven't really achieved anything, right? But wonder questions will always make the child to think. you know I wonder how so and so happens. I wonder um what color comes first in the rainbow. Oh, they'll remember is red. I wonder what color is in the middle. Maybe they've known the first, they've known the last, and then suddenly they just remember, oh, I haven't really thought about it. you know there was this printable I did for my daughter when to build some interest. So I think we were talking about Noah's Ark. So yeah, so this was it. And then we even now try to do some sort of coloring pages. Now, another thing is why I said questions is not just whenever you ask a question, you should have something you want to teach. Now, if she says she knows the colors, she knows about Noah's Ark, she knows this, knows that, then what is next? Oh, let's color in the colors by your, color, use a coloring page or even just draw it by yourself, right? Whenever you're asking questions, make sure you have something to offer. Maybe that will also put us on our feet, right? So that we won't just be like, thank God I'm so done with exams, I'm done with tests. It's now my turn to be asking everybody questions. So that's just an example. Another one is that I wanted to share another example with us. Okay, so we had talked about the classes of animals, right? Now, if the child says, "Oh, I know the five classes of animals," and you can say, "Oh, tell me," and they say fish, amphibians, even if they get it correctly, you must always have something new you want to teach them. Like if they say fishes, I can say, "Oh, do you know this is another name for it." So you get them interested. You also begin to show yourself as a source of information, a source of knowledge, so that they can even come to you with questions. um so I think that's very, very important to note, and especially when our kids are in school. If they've already started school, they've already started doing testing where there's grading and so on. It can become so difficult whenever they now hear a question, it's like they have to be on their feet. Oh, don't worry, Joy. Don't worry, Joy. You catch the replay. I think it should be available shortly after. I'm not sure what happened, but I hope those of us that are here are still hearing me. If you do get if the volume is low at any point, please let us know. And if you're just joining, welcome. Please share the names of your children. Sorry, please share the ages of your children and where you are joining from. No need for names, please. We do not need the children's names. Okay. Um. So just moving to another question. I was just saying that when they are already in school, there's a tendency that questions may no longer be a thing of joy for them. Before they started school, they would have been very curious. They would be the ones bombarding us with why questions, why this, what this, how this. They're on that upper end where they're just keeping us on our feet with questions. Mommy, why this? Daddy, why that? And then they go to school, and before you know it, every day quiz, 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 test, exam. And now when they see questions or when they hear questions, it's like, no, not again. I'm done with questions, right? So we don't want to make sure that we are not now even adding to that pressure, adding to that stress, and taking them away from learning. If you're writing a test, if you've written even a professional exam, what is your thought? What goes through your mind? Are you able to showcase your knowledge? I think I enjoyed writing, for example, the project management professional exam, because the way the questions were structured, I could actually picture myself. Okay, I'm doing a project like this. How will I handle this scenario? It's making me to think, and it wasn't. While the exam itself preparation was stressful, just because it's an exam, but writing down the answers to the questions in the project management exam was more. It was actually an interesting thing, because I actually have a project to do this. What will you do if a client is doing this and that, and you have to respond? I now think about it. I put myself in a project manager scenario. You know, questions should make you think. So even as a teacher, when you're structuring your questions, when you're you should have it in mind that the child should be able to think, the child should be able to enjoy what they're even thinking about and give results that will show understanding and not just yes, no, this is correct, or they have 20 of this in existence, we have 5 types of this. All those kind of questions and answers are not so helpful in the long run to foster the love of learning, if that is our goal, which ultimately should be right. And when we move from quizzing to wondering, we actually need to get ourselves to test and love, love and in, when you now have a child and the child now sees a puzzle somewhere or sees a question somewhere. Oh, what is, some of us, if we get maybe a chat or an update saying, oh, solve this puzzle, or who can do this in 5 minutes, we may be excited, while some of us may see it and say no. I'm all done with those kind of things. The way you respond to some of those questions can actually give you an idea of how far you have come, with questions, and how I don't want to say traumatized you have been by questions that now once you see it, you're like, thank God I don't have to deal with this anymore. But if you still find yourself excited, then that is a good thing, regardless of the form of question, because it means you're still able to stay in touch with the real purpose of questions, which is wondering, to be able to stimulate wonder, to be able to stimulate deep thinking, and not just spilling out answers for the sake of it. So, again, just trying to reiterate how we can differentiate between quizzing questions and wonder questions. So instead of saying, what is this? How many this do we have? Name this, name that. You want to say, I wonder how many of this we have. Can you guess what this is? Then the child begins to think. And they might even give you a name that is interesting. There was an interesting name my daughter had for something. Yes, she called it. So we have this tea that we drink. Like, she has the milk cup, so to speak. So normally she uses that particular one for drinking milk, and then we at a point we started using a particular one for drinking water. Then she said, "Oh, she wants to get her water cup." It was quite interesting because I said, that's an interesting name, which I wouldn't have thought about normally to give a cup. A cup is a cup, right? The only other definition or adjective or something like that I've heard for qualifying a cup is maybe a teacup, which a teacup is used for drinking tea. So it just made sense. Of course, she hadn't gone into all that detail of learning about types of cups or language for describing cups. But when we ask them to guess, sometimes it also helps us to bring out what they even have in their mind, to be able to think for themselves and not just spilling out what they have learned, because this is the kind of thing that would help when somebody is in an exam situation or a test situation. They can think about results for themselves. Not only if you have never heard about it before, then you just leave the page blank. Some of those kind of examples. So children are full of a lot of information. With the things that they have learned, they tend to build on it. They tend to you know modify it in different ways. So when we ask those wonder questions, we bring out really the best out of them. We bring out that interest from them. We bring out curiosity from them. We boost their confidence, because imagine, I ask my daughter now, okay, what is this called? And she tells me this is a water cup. I was like, well, yes, it's correct. It's a water cup because you use this one for drinking water. And maybe if I had picked a different cup that she normally uses for drinking her own milk, she might call it a milk cup. And it's totally correct, because we have teacups that are used for drinking tea. But if I just asked her, what is the name of this thing, and I'm waiting for that answer, if any other thing she says will just be wrong if I don't get the answer that I'm looking for. And that is not a good way to teach children. That is not a good way to foster the love of learning. So I think we've kind of dwelt a bit on that topic, and I hope you've been able to understand really why it is important to foster the love of learning in your children and not just quizzing them, and trying to get answers. If you have seen one of my previous videos where I talked about the 3 period lesson, it actually explains how to teach children and when to ask them questions. So typically, I'll put the link in the comments anyways. So typically you have a period when you're actually telling them this is the name of this item, and then they repeat it after you. Then the second one, ask them to show you, what you just taught them, right? And then the third one will be for them to repeat the name of the item. I can't go into that now. That's a different video altogether. But the video is available. You can just check it on my channel, and I'll put the link later. But right now, if you have any questions, feel free to send them in. I'm going to be going into another area, which is a question that one of us asked on the group. If you're on the we have a free Montessori group for parents of 0 to 6 year olds. Of course, if you have older children, you're still welcome to join. I'm sure you will learn something from there. And she was asking with about an abacus. How can you use the abacus as a Montessori tool? So I decided to bring the abacus here, especially for you that asked the question, and I know others will benefit. Can you still see me? Feel free to post your questions in the chat while this is going on. So this is a typical abacus. It is not the Montessori style abacus. I'm going to say that the Montessori style abacus has three colors. It has red, blue, and green, right? But this one, as you can see, there are multiple colors: purple, pink, orange, yellow, green, blue, different shades of blue, and there's also black. Now, so to use this as a Montessori tool, I'll start by saying if this is what you have, I'm trying to see the best place to put the abacus. So if this is what you have, um, it may not be the best Montessori tool, but again, it depends on what you're trying to teach. Like I had also asked, if you watched my previous video, I had talked about that was episode 3 of the Montessori home education insights. I talked about two key qualities that any learning material or teaching aid needs to have. So if I want to quiz us all, I would ask, what do you think this abacus here will be best for teaching? Let me check the comments. I'll wait for 30 seconds to see if there's any comments coming in. What do you think this tool can be used for? Okay, this is the same type you have. Okay, good. Yeah, the Montessori abacus, the one that is used in classroom, is actually called a bead frame. We have the short bead frame, the small bead frame and the large bead frame. It has just you have typically three colors that is representing the place values: units, tens, hundreds, and units. So that's a topic for elementary. So we're not even going into that now. But of course, if you're in the Montessori home education program, you're going to learn some of all these things and how, some of the tools you can use for mathematics, even the things that you have in your home. So, okay, I don't see. So I'm just going to dive right in. Some examples of what the best uses of this abacus for. And it, um, you might think it would be good for counting, but in fact, let me start with some of the wrong uses. It is not ideal for counting. If you're trying to teach counting, of course, if you want to count it, you can go ahead. But if you're trying to teach counting, this is not the best tool for you. If you're also trying to teach colors, this is not the best tool. So some of the in the video that last week that I had shared about two key qualities of teaching aids. I said normally you would want, for example, to have all the other factors consistent, and the only qualities that will be changing are what you want to teach. So in this case, ideally it would have been good for teaching colors, right? Because the beads are the same, the frame is constant. The only thing that is really changing is the colors. However, if you're teaching someone colors for the first time, you want to start with primary colors, which is red, yellow, blue. So already this is too much. And even if you want to go break it down to the colors of the rainbow plus black and white, this is also not helping because we don't even have red here, for instance, right? And then we have shades of green, we have shades of blue. So you're already going into shades, and shades is a different step, when we're teaching colors. Remember, you want to keep it simple. And when I talk about lessons, I say most times lessons take less than 5 minutes, because if you're starting to teach with the simplest, if I'm teaching colors, I'll start with red, yellow, blue. Again, it's always good to teach in comparison, which means in 5 minutes, I'll just show red, yellow, and blue, right? But if you start off with this, you're going to cause confusion and the child might be so distracted or more interested in the sound that this is making. So this is still not for teaching colors. This is an advanced, if you're trying to teach the shades of colors, and this is only covering some. So you can say, oh, look at this green, look at this type of blue, this shade of blue. Again, it's not consistent. So I wouldn't even recommend this for teaching colors. I got this myself before I really learned about the Montessori method. That was some years ago. And it's a colorful toy, so I still keep it around. And I'll share some of the uses that you can apply at home, if this is the one that you have. But all the times we tried to use it for teaching numbers, again, before we learned so much about Montessori, it really didn't work. They'll count 1, 2, 3. My younger daughter will just push it 4, 5. or 1, 2, or they'll jump from purple. The colors are so attractive, so they can't even use it for counting and all that, right? Um, so, but some of the things you can use it for, like you see, it almost sounds like a rattle. That's interesting. It's very colorful. It's beautiful. It's a good decoration too. It's also very good. Like the tactile, I really like the way it feels. I think the average person might like how it feels as well. Um, it's used for pretend play in my home. As funny as that might sound, my daughters they call it freezes. So freezes, I think, is like it's like this kind of, I don't know, packaged drink that is frozen that you suck on and everything. So they call it freezes, and it's like, oh, which freezes do you want? Do you want the blue freezes? And I'm like, I want blue, and then they'll do it like this and put in my mouth. This is what this is used for in my house. Sometimes they call it lollipop. So I think one of the best uses is for pretend play. Another use, you can use it to test the memory, right? Maybe, oh, which color do you have at the top? Look at this abacus for a while, put it down and tell me what color is on top, what color is at the bottom, just to play a game, right? But this is not your ideal thing for numbers, or even for colors. I would rather you use, let's say, beans, for instance. If you want to learn more about, of course, the hundred tens, the decimal system, that is not your tool for it. The actual Montessori abacus is different. I can share a picture of it in our Montessori group. If you're not there, the link is in the video description for this one. So make sure you join us and get more details. And yes, so I think those are some of the important things I wanted to share. We're still open to questions for a few more minutes. But for those that are just joining us, I'm just going to, you know, talk a little bit about what we said at the beginning. So the whole purpose of this topic, this video, is really to discuss fostering the love of learning for our children. And I said, if I'm to summarize it in one line or in one sentence, it will be: stop quizzing your children, start wondering instead, and foster the love of learning. And we talked about, the difference between quizzing questions and wonder questions. We also shared some examples from the Bible stories. Like I said, for the Bible, if you're not a Christian, just take it as a story that you can benefit from. And we talked about how there was a demand for a sign from the Pharisees that were asking Jesus, show us a sign from heaven. And because he knew that their objective was solely to test him, he didn't give them any solid answer. He just said, your sign will be the sign of Jonah. That was the ultimate response. So we want to make sure that we're not demanding from our children with no clear objective of really trying to teach them anything, but just to quiz, and keep them on their feet all day long. I also shared the example of how sometimes our questions are structured in a way where we are just focused on the answers and not really on the process. We're not able to get the children to think, but just deliver answers. And if they get it, they're happy, they are free, right? So you want to make sure that you are not doing that. So this was really discussing fostering the love of learning in our children. And we're going to be having another session in the coming weeks talking about part 2, some of the other things that we can do apart from questioning and like quizzing versus wondering. And I wanted to also share with us, for those of us that would be interested, we do have the Montessori Home Education Program that runs every year. We concluded that of this year, and I think the reviews and feedback have been really good, really, really awesome. And there is a wait list, that will be in the video description. If you want to join and you're interested for next year, that will be available so you can get more details. So right now we are open to questions. Any questions that you have, feel free to share it. And let us know, if you haven't shared yet, where you connected from and the ages of your children. Okay, so I see 2, 4, yeah, 10 and 12. Can you all still hear me? Let me know. And let me know one major takeaway you've got today, maybe that you didn't know before. And just share it in the comments, share it in the chats. That would be very helpful. And okay, yeah. Okay, just checking that we are still connected. Please put a thumbs up. Put a thumbs up. Let me know one major thing you learned from the session today. And another good thing we're going to be doing, if you are in our free Montessori group, feel free to share your questions, and we could discuss it actually during our next YouTube live. It will be very I know it will be very interesting and helpful for those, who may have similar questions, but they didn't even think to ask. Like I see someone was saying, for the abacus, I was going to say counting. It can be used for counting. So at least I'm glad you have seen words may not be the best tool for counting. For our next YouTube live, we're going to be discussing how still fostering the love of learning, but how we can use our environment, to foster the love of learning. Okay, that's very good. The distinction between wondering and quizzing questions, very key. That's very, very key. Yeah, when I learned that also, it was very helpful for me. Like I said, our goal is not to teach, but to foster the love of learning. Ultimately, when you foster that love of learning, you don't have to be teaching because you can't really teach the children everything. Even schools cannot teach the children everything. But when you foster the love of learning, a sense of curiosity, very good. You foster a sense of curiosity to learn better. So when you foster the love of learning, you're going to find that the child is going to bring the learning to you. They're going to come to you to ask, oh, I want to learn about this. And remember, when the child is the one asking you the questions, they are more willing to learn, they are more disposed, they are more primed to actually learn. And that is the best time to really, pump in that knowledge, pump in the information, which means when you are quizzing, you need to have information to share. You need to have answers to give and not just expect that the person is going to respond to you and then you say, oh, you have passed, you have done this. You have done this very well. Okay, that is good. That is good. Okay, so the difference between wondering and quizzing questions, I'm very glad we got that, and hopefully we can apply it because that would really, really help in differentiating. Okay, so we'll be wrapping up in 1 more minute if there are no other questions. Make sure you are subscribed and turn on notifications so that you'll be aware of our next live stream. I also always post it in our WhatsApp community. So if you haven't joined, if you're with us and you haven't joined that before, just check the video description to see the link. And if there are no other questions, we'll be wrapping this up. And thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this. I really appreciate your support. I appreciate your interest and curiosity to learn. The goal is really that our children are going to benefit from these things that we are learning so that ultimately we can support them better in their education, support them at home, and in everything that they are doing. Thank you so, so much. This was good. I was very excited to be here and I was not disappointed. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. All right, so we'll be going off now. Thank you, everybody, and see you at the next one. Have a good rest of day. Have a good rest of night, depending on your location, and make sure you share the link still with your friends and with your family so they can learn what you have also learned and benefit from our programs. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a good day.